You've felt it, haven't you? That suffocating weight when you're surrounded by chatter that means nothing. That bone-deep exhaustion after hours of small talk that leads nowhere. While others seem energized by the crowd, you find yourself drained, yearning for the quiet sanctuary of your own thoughts. If this resonates with you, you're not broken, you're not antisocial. You might just be experiencing what philosophers have observed for centuries, a phenomenon that reveals something profound about the nature of intelligence itself. There's a strange pattern that emerges throughout history. Those blessed, or perhaps cursed, with deeper intelligence seem to need far less social connection than the rest of us. They flee from the cacophony of crowds, the mindless chatter, the relentless carousel of social obligations. But here's what's crucial to understand. They don't withdraw out of hatred or arrogance. They withdraw out of inner necessity. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote something that cuts straight to the heart of this mystery. The capacity to endure solitude rises in direct proportion to the elevation of the mind. The higher consciousness climbs, the further it distances itself from the noise of the masses. What serves as distraction and comfort for ordinary people? Light conversation, gossip, the constant hum of social interaction quickly becomes an unbearable burden for the thinking mind. But why? Why do those who see furthest feel disturbed by what others consider essential? Why do they flourish in silence where others wither away? To understand this, we must first shatter a naive assumption that being sociable equals being happy. Society has elevated gregariousness to the status of supreme virtue. Extroversion is paraded as the gold standard, the ultimate measure of a life well lived. Anyone who lives more withdrawn is viewed with suspicion, labeled as marginal, misanthropic, even deficient. In truth, this distance is a form of clarity. The intelligent mind perceives what remains invisible in the machinery of togetherness, the superficiality of exchanges, the masks everyone wears, the endless performance of social roles. Most conversations aren't aimed at discovering truth. They're designed to ward off boredom. They're not genuine encounters, but mutual anesthesia. People don't speak to understand. They speak to avoid silence. And for a mind that knows the true value of silence, this becomes quickly unbearable. Because silence isn't empty. Silence is the space where thought gains depth, where understanding takes root. For most people, this emptiness is intolerable because it forces them to confront themselves. For the intelligent, it's a refuge. Schopenhauer saw, in the capacity to endure solitude, proof of inner wealth. Those who are empty inside need constant stimulation to flee from themselves. Those who are rich within don't need such crutches. Their own company suffices. This is why lucid minds appear indifferent to social life, not because they despise others, but because what they find within themselves seems more precious. Of course, this doesn't mean they reject all human contact. Even the most brilliant mind remains a social being, but they choose with meticulous care. They prefer depth over breadth, authenticity over distraction. One sincere exchange can be worth more to them than 100 hours of chatter. And here's where the conflict emerges. Society doesn't understand this withdrawal. It interprets it as contempt or coldness, when in reality, it's an instinct of protection, protecting the mind from drowning in the insignificant. Imagine possessing a rare and delicate instrument that would fall out of tune at the slightest tumult. Wouldn't you seek to preserve it, to let it resonate only in spaces worthy of its music? This is exactly what the intelligent person does with their mind. When an intelligent person observes social life, they often do so with a fatigue mixed with lucidity. Not because they're incapable of forming connections, but because they perceive the invisible mechanisms that drive it all. For the majority, social life resembles an endless theatrical performance. Everyone plays a role, sometimes without even realizing it. We smile when we should smile, laugh when we should laugh, say what won't offend anyone. This game isn't necessarily hypocritical. It allows coexistence to function. But for a mind hungry for truth, it quickly becomes farcical. Schopenhauer spoke of the clamor of the world that disperses and exhausts the spirit. He wasn't referring only to physical noise, but to the uninterrupted flow of opinions, conventions, and banalities that suffocate thought. The intelligent person feels this flood as a constraint. What slides off others' skin becomes for them a weight, a permanent disturbance. Take everyday small talk, for example. Most conversations revolve around trivialities, the weather, gossip, daily banalities. For many, these exchanges are pleasant, even necessary little oils that keep the social machine running. But for the intelligent, they're exhausting. In 100 sentences, they sometimes can't find a single truth. They feel time and energy evaporating without any depth being reached. This doesn't stem from a sense of superiority that's a common misunderstanding. Withdrawal is often mistaken for arrogance, but the reality is different. It's not pride that compels silence, it's standards. The intelligent person doesn't measure a conversation by the smiles it produces, but by the clarity it leaves behind. Added to this is another difficulty, the constant expectation of conformity. In every human group, an unspoken rule reigns. Be like us, laugh, think, act in the same direction. Anyone who deviates too much attracts suspicious looks. For most people, this adaptation happens naturally. For the intelligent, it's torture, because they perceive every compromise, every mask that distances them from their authenticity. And so arises this feeling of inner disconnect. You're sitting among others, nodding, smiling, but deep down, you're not really there. You're playing the role, but don't recognize yourself in it. This discomfort becomes so crushing that a question imposes itself. Why continue inflicting this on myself? It's then that withdrawal ceases to be a choice and becomes a vital necessity. Reading, solitary walks, writing, silent reflection transform into medicine. What others call isolation becomes healing for the intelligent. Schopenhauer claimed that the less we expect from others, the more we find within ourselves. The ordinary person seeks distractions to escape themselves. The intelligent seeks themselves because within their interior, they discover more than society could ever offer. This doesn't mean they refuse all relationships. They too desire closeness, but not just any kind. They want authenticity, a friendship based not on interest, but on understanding. A relationship where silence has as much value as words. And it's precisely this rarity that makes social connections so few. The higher the standards for truth, the rarer become the encounters that meet them. This is why they give the impression of avoiding people. But in reality, they don't avoid persons, they avoid masks. To understand why intelligent minds detach from social life, we must look at the opposite. Why do so many people relentlessly seek the company of others? Why does the crowd seem to give them life while it suffocates intelligence? The answer isn't superficial. It plunges into the psychological structure of human beings. Schopenhauer described the ordinary person as poor within themselves, not in a material sense, but in an inner sense. Their thoughts revolve around immediate needs, status to defend, external stimulations. Deprived of this constant flow, they find themselves facing a void they don't know how to inhabit. And this void is nothing other than the encounter with oneself, an encounter they dread more than anything. Society, for them, is a rampart against this confrontation. As long as they're surrounded by voices, parties, events, they don't have to face the fundamental question, who am I when no one is watching? For the intelligent, this question isn't a nightmare but a source. Alone, they don't feel amputated but enlarged. Their solitude isn't a desert but a garden. Their mind offers them companionship that others find only in multitudes. This is why the ordinary person chases after crowds they seek oblivion there. The intelligent runs towards silence they seek the memory of themselves there. Another mechanism explains this attachment. Social validation. Most individuals need the gaze of others to feel they exist. Without approval, without recognition, they feel invisible. Their identity rests on the social mirror. The intelligent sees through this dependency. They understand that building one's being on others' opinions is to live in permanent exile. They know that an existence that constantly requires confirmation isn't truly their own. This is why so many social rituals seem hollow to them. Think of a social gathering. Everyone displays their successes, projects, travels. The appearance of dialogue masks what's really a silent competition, an ego marketplace. For many, this staging is an enjoyable game. For the thinker, it's transparent theater, almost painful to watch. They perceive the fear of being forgotten, the compulsive need for recognition. And once they've seen this, they can no longer abandon themselves to it. You might think they're insensitive to loneliness, but that's not the case. They too know the desire for others, the need for friendship, for closeness. The difference is they can endure emptiness without rushing toward noise. They can face their own silences without immediately filling them. Here reveals itself a fundamental opposition. For the majority, solitude is a prison. For the intelligent, it's a sanctuary. Two ways of living the same state, two incompatible experiences, and each looks at the other with incomprehension. For most people, solitude feels like a condemnation, a gray cell where you're locked when you fail to play the social game well. For the intelligent mind, the same solitude becomes a privilege, a source of energy, a space for growth. Schopenhauer affirmed that no one is truly alone when they're at peace with themselves, because those who are rich within carry an entire universe inside them. Where the ordinary person hears only oppressive emptiness and silence, the intelligent perceives a symphony of ideas, memories, and intuitions. Why this difference? Because solitude offers three essential gifts. The first gift is clarity. In society, our attention is pulled in every direction. Judgments, comparisons, expectations, obligations. We're constantly projected outside ourselves. Solitude returns our inner voice to us. It allows us to distinguish what is truly ours from the echo of the crowd. For the intelligent, this space of purification is vital. The second gift is creativity. No great work was born in permanent tumult. Whether in philosophy, music, or science, decisive intuitions emerge in calm. Ideas are like seeds, they only germinate in silent soil. This is why the intelligent often considers social obligations as theft. They steal the time when their thoughts could flourish. The third gift is freedom. In every group you're chained to roles, implicit rules, the pressure of approval. Alone, you're freed from these masks. You can think without censure, dream without ridicule, be without justification. For the intelligent, these moments of absolute freedom are perhaps the only ones where they feel fully themselves. To the masses, this withdrawal seems suspicious. They ask, why do you refuse company? Why do you exclude yourself from the world? But what they ignore is that in solitude, the intelligent doesn't abandon life, but they enter it more deeply. This is the great paradox. What many consider an escape is, for some, a return. The first fruit is independence. Those who no longer await their identity from others' gazes become free to establish their own measures. They don't ask, what will they think of me? But is this true? Is this just? Is this essential? This freedom can't be bought with applause. The second fruit is depth. While crowds disperse their energy in 1,000 chatter sessions, the intelligent concentrates theirs. They read to understand, not to shine. They think to penetrate reality, not to seduce. They exchange not to fill emptiness, but to seek truth. From this inner discipline emerges a treasure that no superficial sociability could equal. The third fruit is authenticity. By constantly bending to expectations, we lose ourselves in roles. Those who grant themselves solitude, on the contrary, rediscover the thread of their true being. Authenticity is harsh. It often displeases. It disturbs. But it's the only path to inner peace. And this is precisely what the intelligent seeks above all: coherence with themselves. The fourth fruit is creativity. Silence is the ocean of inventions. Great intuitions aren't born in noisy halls, but in quiet nights, solitary walks, hours of contemplation. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard all forged their most powerful thoughts in isolation, not at banquets. Far from being an escape, Solitude is the fertile ground of originality. The fifth fruit, finally, is serenity. Those who no longer need permanent approval free themselves from profound anxiety, fear of rejection, fear of invisibility, fear of not being enough. They understand that value isn't a price set by others, but a truth discovered within oneself. From this certainty emerges an almost unshakable tranquility. This doesn't mean the intelligent rejects all human bonds. They need friendship, love, community, but they want them differently. Not in quantity, but in quality. Not in noise, but in authenticity. Not in a network of hundreds of acquaintances, but in a restricted circle of genuine affinities. Thus, the social life of the intelligent isn't absent, it's transfigured. It's measured not in numbers, but in truth. Perhaps this is Schopenhauer's ultimate message. Solitude isn't the enemy of society, it's its condition. Because only those who know how to be with themselves can be fully with others, without dependency, without masks, without fear. In the end, the real question isn't, why do the intelligent avoid social life? The real question is, what could we all gain if we too had the courage to inhabit silence more deeply? Perhaps we'd discover we're richer than we believe. Perhaps we'd understand that life doesn't begin in the crowd, but in interiority, and that only from there can true community be born. So ask yourself, do you seek company to forget yourself or to find yourself? Your answer might just determine your freedom.